Everything was in motion. Everything was changing. They weren't just surviving. They were building a life that was meant to last. Chapter 48. The Sterling Gala. The River Oaks project culminated in the Sterling Gala, an event designed to showcase the restored estate to Houston's high society. It was the kind of night where diamonds were common and secrets were the currency of choice. Reba stood in the Versailles meets Texas foyer, her emerald dress rustling against the polished marble. "We did it," he whispered. "The foundation is solid, and the bootlegger's cellar is the talk of the town." But the night took a turn when a woman approached them, a face Reba recognized from the news. It was Helena Thorne, Harlan's cousin, and she didn't look happy about the nature preserve. "You think you've won, Reba Hart," Helena said, her voice sharp. Reba looked at her, not with anger, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived far worse than a social snub. "Integrity isn't a luxury, Helena. It's the only thing that keeps the house from falling down. You should try it sometime." As Helena huffed away, Julian squeezed Reba's hand. "You're getting too good at that." "I've had 20 years of practice," Reba smiled. The gala was a triumph, and as they walked through the grounds later that night, they realized that the Hart-Ashford partnership was more than just a business. It was a legacy of their own making. Chapter 49. The Sponsor's Burden. While the glitz of River Oaks was exciting, Cheyenne's world was anchored in a much grittier reality. She was now sponsoring several women, but one in particular, a young mother named Mia, was struggling. Cheyenne sat in a small coffee shop, listening as Mia cried about a recent relapse. "I felt so strong, Cheyenne. And then, I just stopped caring. I felt like I was drowning again." Cheyenne reached across the table, her own sobriety a shield she offered to the younger woman. "Drowning is part of the process, Mia. The trick is to keep kicking until you find the surface. You haven't failed. You just had a bad day. Tomorrow is a new foundation." She spent the afternoon helping Mia find a temporary childcare solution so she could attend an intensive outpatient program. It was exhausting work, and as Cheyenne walked back to her car, she felt the weight of it. She called Reba. "Mom, I don't know how you did it. How you kept us all afloat while you were drowning yourself." "I didn't do it alone, honey." Reba's voice was warm over the line. "I did it because I had you. You were my surface. And now, you're the surface for someone else. That's how the heart works." Chapter 50. The Silent Partnership. As the Heights project wound down and the River Oaks estate settled into its new life, a new conflict arose between Reba and Julian. It wasn't about a client or a blueprint. It was about their fundamental approach to growth. Julian wanted to expand into downtown high-rises, commercial spaces, the big league. Reba wanted to focus on the Hearth, a series of affordable housing projects for families in transition. "High-rises pay the bills, Reba," Julian said during a late-night session in the office. "The Hearth is a beautiful idea, but it's not a business model." "The Hearth is why I do this, Julian," Reba countered, her eyes flashing. "I don't want to build monuments to corporate ego. I want to build places where people can heal. My father didn't lose his job for a skyscraper. He lost it for the truth of the ground." They spent a week in a silent partnership, communicating only through spreadsheets and project updates. The house felt cold, even with the Houston humidity pressing against the windows. It was Van who broke the stalemate. "Hey, so, I was looking at the downtown site Julian wants," Van said, popping into the kitchen. "Did you know that the block right next to it is owned by a non-profit that's looking for a development partner for a family shelter?" Julian and Reba looked at each other. "A mixed-use development," Julian murmured. "Commercial high-rise on one side, the Hearth on the other. Shared amenities, integrated community. It's the big league and the heart, all in one zip code," Reba smiled. The silence broke, replaced by the frantic energy of a new, shared vision. They realized that their disagreements weren't obstacles. They were the friction that made the final design stronger. Chapter 51. The Infinite Circle. A novel doesn't truly end. It just reaches a point where the characters can handle the rest of the story on their own. As the years passed, the Hart household continued to be the center of a beautiful, chaotic universe. There were more weddings. Kira eventually married a brilliant, quiet architect who was the only person who could out-sarcasm her. There were more grandchildren, and more code white emergencies involving lost toys and high fevers. Reba and Julian grew old together, their partnership becoming a legend in the Houston real estate world. They never built the perfect skyscraper, but they built thousands of homes where people felt safe. Van Montgomery eventually took over the firm, though he never stopped calling Reba Mrs. H. He became the most successful agent in the city's history, mostly because he never lost the ability to see the heart in a house. Cheyenne remained the pillar of her community, a woman who proved every day that your past doesn't define your destination. She eventually opened a halfway house for young mothers in recovery, a place she named Reba's Hearth. And Barbara Jean? Well, Barbara Jean continued to be Barbara Jean. She lived to be 95, and her last request was to be buried with a bundt cake pan so she could show those Germans a thing or two in the afterlife. Her funeral was the largest the suburbs had ever seen, filled with pastel, polyester, and the scent of lavender. Reba Hart lived her life with gentle hands and the heart of a fighter. She survived the storms, she survived the lies, and most importantly, she survived the quiet moments. She was a survivor. But as the story of her heart proves, she was so much more. She was a heart, and in Houston, that means you never, ever stop growing. The End, The Texas Flip, a novel of risk, love, and real estate. Chapter 1, The Curse of the Redhead. The Texas sun was an unapologetic weight, pressing down on the asphalt of the Houston suburbs until the air shimmered with the ghost of heat. Inside the Hart household, Reba Hart sat at the kitchen table. A stack of closing documents mocked her from under the fluorescent light. She was a woman built of grit and fire-red hair. But today, the fire felt like it was smoldering under a pile of damp ashes. "I sold it," Reba announced to the empty room, her voice a mixture of triumph and poison. Cheyenne, her eldest daughter, wandered in, balancing a toddler on one hip and a look of vague concern on her face. "That's good, right, Mom? Isn't selling houses the whole point of your job?" Reba let out a dry, hacking laugh. "In theory, yes. In practice, I am apparently a charitable organization for people named David Davids." She explained the sting. David's a man whose parents were clearly as uninspired as his business ethics, was another agent at her firm. He hadn't bought the house to live in. He hadn't bought it to help a family. He had bought it to flip it. Within 48 hours, he had listed it for $50,000 more than Reba had sold it for. 50 grand. Cheyenne, Reba whispered, the number tasting like copper in her mouth. "He made my annual salary in a weekend because he had the stones to buy low. I'm the flippy. I'm the one getting tossed around while everyone else lands on their feet." "Well," Cheyenne said, sliding into the chair opposite her mother, "why don't you just be the flipper? You should be the flipper." Reba looked at her daughter with the weary patience of a woman who had seen the bottom of a wine bottle and the bottom of a bank account. "Because, honey, the bank doesn't lend money to red-headed women with grit. They lend it to people with high credit scores. Mine took a nosedive during the divorce and never pulled out of the tailspin. Don't ever get divorced, Cheyenne. It ruins your soul and your interest rates." The conversation shifted, as it often did in the Hart house, toward the absurd. They discussed Van, Cheyenne's husband, a former high school football star whose professional career had ended with an injury and whose current career consisted mostly of being charming and occasionally profound in the most unexpected ways. "Van has a pre-approval letter," Cheyenne mentioned casually. Reba froze. "He what?" "He got it months ago. Every time he and Brock get into a fight and Brock threatens to kick us out of the guest house, Van gets paranoid. He wanted a quick exit strategy." Reba's mind began to whir. It was a dangerous sound, the sound of a woman who had nothing left to lose, and a bottle of whiteout in the junk drawer. Chapter 2, The Froth on the Market. Van Montgomery was a man of simple pleasures, a good sandwich, a loud television, and the unwavering belief that he was the protagonist of a very interesting movie. When Reba approached him with the partnership, he didn't react with the excitement she expected. Instead, he leaned back in his recliner, looking like a retired philosopher king. Pass, Van said. Reba blinked. Pass? Van, I am offering you the chance of a lifetime. We use your credit, my brains, and we rake in the cash. We could be the next power duo of Houston real estate. Mrs. H, Van said, using the nickname that always made Reba feel both respected and incredibly old. The housing market is falsely inflated. It's full of untrained speculators. To quote Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, the froth is on the market. Reba stared at him. Do you even know what that means? Did you just eat a dictionary? I know that when an old guy in a suit talks about money, I listen, Van replied. Risk is for people who have something to gain. I have everything I need right here. Why would I gamble our future on a bubble that's about to burst? But Reba knew Van. She knew he was a creature of ego. She knew that he prided himself on his stones, that elusive, masculine quality of bravery. You're just afraid, Reba challenged, her eyes narrowing. Davids, is making a fortune because he has the nerve. You're just talking. You're all talk and no trigger. Van bristled. The air in the room changed. You think I don't have stones? I put forks in toasters, Mrs. H. I live on the edge. A fork in a toaster gets you an English muffin and a mild heart arrhythmia, Reba snapped. Buying a house gets you a life. I guarantee you, I will find a house to flip within the week. 7 days. You in or out? Van looked at her, the challenge hanging between them like a physical weight. 1 week, or 7 days, whichever comes first. But if it blows up, it's on your red head.